Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the weekly Roar. Hey, I wanted to start out the new year with my first live of 2019, starting to do a growth series. And so I am going to spend the next 15 weeks with 15 leaders and coaches talking about the 15 invaluable laws of growth. Now, I'm just going to tell you, this is not a book club. It is not a book study. That's not what we're doing. We're just discussing each one of these laws and sharing them with you in hopes that it sparks something with you, gets you started on the journey, or propels you further in your journey than you already are. So I am Greg Storch. I'm the founder of Loin Enterprise. I'm a certified professional coach. And of course, I'm a team member with the John Maxwell team. And today, as you see, I am being joined by my good friend, fellow coach, and fellow John Maxwell team member, Eric G. Reid. Eric, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I was taking a minute and sharing it out, and I looked at it. I saw that you could see the top of my head, and I thought, oh, I guess maybe I should pay attention up here. Thank you.
It's all good. It's all good. We've got training wheels. I'll get you through it. You share it out, and I appreciate you sharing it out. Go ahead and share, because I'm just going to tell people a little bit. Eric is running Success Life. He has the Success Life coaching. He also hosts Success Life Live every weekday morning, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a great way to start your day. Great coaching topics just to get you prompted into action. So check that out on Eric G. Reid's Facebook page every morning. And so thank you all for jumping on. And Eric, again, thank you for sitting with me today to talk about the law of intentionality. But before we get started in our discussion about this topic, there might be some people who aren't really familiar with the 15 laws. It comes from the book written by John C Maxwell. And really, yeah, see, we all got it. Some of us don't have it, right? But I would describe this as a recipe book, a recipe on how to reach your full potential. It kind of gives you tips and these invaluable laws on how to get the right attitude and tap into your strengths, identify your passion and your purpose, right? And it helps develop skills. It gets you thinking about what you need to do and what actions you need to take and what questions you should be asking yourself to get you going in the direction of growth. And which is simply, what areas you need to improve in your life. And we all could do that, right, Eric? So we've got plenty of them.
Call me out. Go ahead.
But, this growth is different for all of us. It depends. I mean, growth for us is as different as each one of us is. So what this means to you is going to be different than what it means to me. And that's why I decided I would invite guests on each week to talk about their perspectives and the application of these laws in their own lives and, share advice. And so just sit back, you guys, relax, and just watch and listen as Eric and I get to talk about this first law, which is the law of intentionality. So, Eric, I know you're familiar with this book because, of course, you're not only an avid reader, but you're part of the John Maxwell team, and this is one of his books. So let's talk about the law of intentionality. Growth doesn't just happen. So what I want to know from you is, when did you actually first learn about the importance of personal growth?
First I will have to say, I think I'm always relearning the importance. I think we all sort of start out and it's like, okay, I'm going to be intentional about growing this, patience, courage, confidence, whatever. And then as we sort of get into that, we get comfortable, Then we have to become intentional again about like, okay, is this my resting place? No. And so I always see it as sort of a digging down, layering, sort of that archaeological dig. Like, what happens next? Where do I go to next? So I remember the first time I got introduced to John Maxwell into the book was I was working in Miami with somebody that was like the pinnacle of success. Like, you know, by every standards, helicopters, limos, multiple houses. And I
Wow.
was working for them and I'm like, man, this isn't going to last. And I realized that they were building themselves. They were just building something and then it would build and collapse and build and collapse. And I thought, they're not building themselves. They're not really changing who they are long enough to sustain the success into the next level. And they happened to have a couple John Maxwell books, and 15 Laws was one of them on the shelf. I thought, interesting, it's never been read. Maybe I should read it and then like try and teach the person. So
Wow. So you actually first got exposed by observing the complete antithesis, somebody not employing the law of intentionality.
they were, so I mean, we were doing a TV show and they were the star. So I think it's safe to say by external standards, they were a success. I was like the
Right.
guy that was like so far off camera, I'd be lucky to get a shoulder shot. Um, and I was like, so I read the 21-year Irrefutable Laws of Leadership and I was like, oh my gosh, not doing this, not doing this, not doing this, not doing this. And then I started into the 15 laws. And I'm like, man, if I grow my area of this, then I can do this as a leader. And I started to see how with John's books and those two books, they really overlap. So then I said, okay, I'm going to work on one law a month for the next 15 months.
I love it. I love that. So I wanted to share a little bit about my story because it's kind of comical. I was actually listening to the book on Audible one day on my work, on my drive into work. And it was the first chapter, and John's talking about how somebody asked him the question, do you have a growth plan? And he kind of went into panic mode. And he's like, not only do I not have one, I don't know what one is. And he's kind of looking around for people that have done it. He's asking everybody, he's like, do you have a growth plan? And everybody's he's asking is like, no. And so, but this was about 3 years ago, I would say. And I was kind of panicking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm approaching my 50th birthday and I'm just now hearing about personal growth and a growth plan. Man, I'm way behind the power curve. And it kind of scared me for a little while because I was like, man, is it too late? Am I done? And so I ended up listening to the book, and this book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, got me set on the path. And thank God that he started out with the law of intentionality because that's where it all started. I got intentional
Well,
about.
and I think he points out really well, um, those that have goals will always achieve, what was it? The difference between goals and plans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because where I think we're at right now, if you focus on your goals, you may hit your goals. But it doesn't guarantee growth. If you focus on growth, you will grow and always hit your goals.
just read that one more time just for the folks that are watching because that's huge.
And I think it's this time of year so important too. If you focus on goals, you may hit goals, but that doesn't guarantee growth. If you focus on growth, you will grow and always hit goals. And so
Exactly.
when people say, "Yeah, I've got a plan. I'm going to lose weight, put money in the bank, blah blah blah," those are goals, and you may or may not hit them, but that doesn't mean you're going to grow as a person. And I use the example often as a coach. I'm like, somebody say, "I want to lose 20 pounds." I'm like, "So what is that? Like the head and the first part of the left arm?" Because we whack it off, goals met, moving on. They're like, "No, that's not what I meant. I want to become healthier." And I'm like, that's personal growth. Learning to take discipline, be consistent in your actions, become aware of who you are and how you eat and where you move. That's learning, that's growing. Setting a goal of
Mm-hmm.
losing 20 pounds, I can accomplish that in 10 minutes with a hacksaw. And so I love the way that John distinguishes being intentional about a growth plan versus being intentional about hitting a goal.
Yes, I do too. It also reminds me, somebody just put, it helps you to figure out what things you need to improve in our life, which is true. When you were talking, it reminded me of the other quote that he says, everybody talks about this one, the one from James Allen, that, people are so anxious to improve themselves or improve their circumstances, but they're unwilling to improve themselves and therefore remain bound. So that's exactly what this is all about. So for those of you watching, kicking off this 15 weeks of growth, we're starting off with the law of intentionality, and we're talking about why becoming intentional is so important, because growth, your personal growth and your professional growth, they just don't happen. A lot of people make some assumptions that it's just going to happen, and nothing could be further from the truth. All right. So that was awesome. Okay. So thanks for sharing your story about learning the importance of personal growth. I think we have some people that might be watching this video, whether they're live now with us or not. But what would you tell them about intentionality if they aren't familiar with the book or personal growth? They haven't really thought about it much. What is intentionality? How do you define that?
So, as you know, and I tease often, I'm the worst speller in the world, but when I hear words, I try and okay, how can I remember this? And so when I think of intentionality, it starts with that in, and it's like, okay, I got to go in, and then I got to have some kind of tension. Okay, intention. Am I constantly in tension right now? Or is it external tension? Like external tension could be my boss getting mad because I didn't get there on time. Something going on in our finances that we could lose the house, lose the car, go bankrupt. Those are external tensions, but they don't require me to go internal. Intentional growth requires me to go internal and create some kind of tension. And the only way I can do that is understand who I am. And, he talks about the growth gaps. What am I aware of? And what am I aware of who I am now versus who I should be? Like when I talk about the boss, it was like, dude, you don't understand who you should be in this story.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. My definition, I was thinking of it because at first I was like, wait, intentionality, being intent, not having an intention. And I think that's a big difference we need to point out here is this isn't about setting an intention to do something. It's having an intent. It's executing. So I define intentionality as action with purpose. What do you think? I just made it up.
And I would just have to because, it's always a competition among coaches. I would have to say an action, a prolonged action.
Yes. Thank you for that. And the reason why Eric adding on prolonged is so important is because one of the points we wanted to make during this broadcast was this is a never-ending story. Your personal growth journey is just that. You're never going to reach the destination. So that's before you do anything, you need to set that mindset right up front. You're not going to a certain destination. You are on a lifelong journey of growth. So be ready for that. So Eric, you actually, I didn't even send you a copy of my script, and you segued right into my next section. Because, I was going to ask you, you mentioned these gaps, and I'm going to kind of highlight them. But when you started your growth journey, what was your gap? you may have had several, but what was the one big one that you had to overcome to start getting intentional about your growth?
Oh Lord, I'm gonna have to check my notes from back then because I think I was living in all of the gaps, and I think at the time they felt like they were bigger than they really were. Like, um, so do you have the gaps written down? And we'll go. Okay, so
Yeah, I do. So
the
let me
assumption.
do that. Let
Okay,
me read the gaps real quick for those of you that aren't familiar with the gaps. There's 8 gaps. There's an assumption gap that you assume you'll just grow. There's a knowledge gap. You don't know how to grow. There's a timing gap. It's just not the right time for you to be doing anything for yourself to grow. There's the mistake gap. You're afraid if you do something to grow, you're going to make a mistake and you don't want to look bad. There's the perfection gap, where you're going to spend time trying to find the most perfect way to do it, and then you'll do it. The inspiration gap, I don't feel like doing it. There's the comparison gap. Who am I to grow? There's so many other people that are so much better than I am. And then there's the expectation gap is that you thought it was going to be easier than it actually is. So those are the 8 gaps. So back to you, Eric. Which one of those really, jumped out at you when you were going through this journey?
so what I love about John's book and this one in particular is he always has like these quizzes or homework assignments. And so if you look, you may not be able to see it, but at the time I wrote out the timing gap, the mistake gap, the perfection gap, and the expectation gap.
Oh my God.
I was just a big old gap. But the timing gap, at the time it was like, I can't do it now because I always feel like everything has to be cleared off the table before I start something new. It's like, in Italy, you go to dinner and they just keep bringing food all day and you just keep eating and eating and nothing gets cleared away. I kind of grew up in that house that all the dishes had to be put away before you pulled out dessert.
Exactly.
And so I sometimes get in that timing gap with my growth. I'm like, well, I haven't finished this. I haven't finished that. I got to get rid. And there's always something that's going to interrupt the timing. And then the mistake gap. My father was. I grew up in a very, very German Lutheran mechanical engineer house. So everything was like in a box, and he knew how to make right corners out of everything.
Yes.
So even attempting would scare me. And then the perfection gap, I think we all take if you want to, I never hear anybody say, well, I want to learn to run. And they look at the average guy doing a 10-minute mile. They always look at like the Olympic athlete and they think that's who they have to become. And when you're doing personal growth and personal development, you don't have to look at the Olympic athlete. You can look at the guy standing next to you on the treadmill and go, okay, he's doing it. I can do it. And better yet, I'm doing more than I did yesterday, so I'm getting more perfect.
I love it. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So for those of you that know me, you'll probably not be surprised that my biggest gap was the perfection gap. I am known to be a perfectionist. And the problem with that gap and these gaps, when John talks about these gaps in this chapter, a gap is something that's stopping you from getting from where you are now to where you're trying to go, where you want to be. There's something getting in your way, and he calls these gaps, and I just read off the 8 of them. And so the one that was getting in my way was this perfection gap because I overthink it. And the problem with that gap is you keep thinking and trying to wait for it to get perfect before you start. And the problem is nothing is perfect. Perfection doesn't even exist. And so when you wait for perfection, you're never going to get started. It's not going to show. That day's never coming if you're waiting for perfection. So, these are 8 gaps. Listen, Eric brought up a great point. Some of you haven't read this book before. This book Paperback, it's a great read. It's about an inch thick. You can get it for like $11 on Amazon Prime. So if you're loving this stuff already, and we still got 14 more weeks to go through, go on Amazon and get a copy of this 15 Laws book. I'm telling you, it's going to spark something in you. It's the one book. I'm not a reader. I used to not enjoy reading at all. And Eric, I know you can commiserate with me on this, but this is the one book that I cannot put down.
And I have
So
to echo that when I go to IMC, which is the John Maxwell event, and John often will sign books for people, I will have there'll be 500 to 1,000 people in line, and there's like, what book should I buy? I'm like, I'll be like, I know John's newest book came out today, but still buy this. Because
yeah,
what I will tell you, and I know John probably hates me, but he's sold more copies of this book than ever before because of me. If you're a parent, you can use the 15 laws to parent your kids. Like, how do we teach our kids that growth is a journey? How do we get them out of this, like turning sportsmanship from winning the game into being a winner in the game? How do we take our company to the next level? Well, do we want to just hit our targets, or do we want to develop lasting change in our company? So I always tell people that, like, this book, you could learn and teach and utilize in every area of your life, because everybody has to get intentional. It's not going to accidentally happen. You're going to become the number one company, the number one team, or your kid's going to go to Harvard automatically. You need a guide. See, John just sold 2 more books.
Somebody in our audience, sorry, I don't see who you are, but they're giving you some encouragement. Way to go, Eric.
When you buy the book, tell John. No.
Yeah, you want to kick back. So by the way, I'm not pushing it for any reason other than I'm interested in adding value to you and having you experience what we've experienced already. So Eric, let's see, we're running up on time. We've got about 8 minutes left. So what I really want for viewers to hear about is, okay, so we have this law, we're talking about personal growth, and this law is the law of intentionality. Now, and there's some things that get in our way, these gaps that get in our way of growing. And so now we've talked about why it's important. Oh, wait, maybe we didn't talk about why it's important. Why growth? Growth is what gets you on your way to reaching your potential, your full potential. If you're not growing, you'll never get to your potential, or the never-ending pursuit of your full potential. That's why growth, personal growth, is important. And you know the saying, you've probably all heard it before, if you're not growing, you're dying. So that forward movement in life in all areas will just help you become a more well-rounded individual and keep you growing and learning. So, but with that said, what I wanted to do, Eric, is spend a few minutes talking about how have you applied this law in particular, law of intentionality, into your own life. If somebody's listening, they're like, now what do I do? What does this law mean to me? What's an example of what you've done with intentionality?
Oh my gosh, it echoes. As you know, as we know, it's sort of like once we begin something, if we do it with the right intention, it becomes a compounded effect. And so for me, the law of intentionality, or law of intention, in the beginning was so freeing, because it was like, do you mean it's not about goals? And when I say this thing, life is not about goals. All my life I've been like setting my New Year's resolution and then failing by mid-February and then kicking my butt the entire rest of the year and thinking I was a failure and I'm fat and I'm ugly and I'm like, do you mean there is not a permanent record? There's only a growth plan? It was so freeing to say, you mean I have the rest of my life to figure this out? And as soon as I said, wait a minute, this is going to be the rest of my life, not to say I got lazy, but then I was able to be like, okay, so how can I unpack it in a purposeful way that I'll actually get to experience it and learn from it, as opposed to just hit the target, go to the next, hit the target, go to the next. And so
Yes.
part of one of my daily activities when I start in the morning in my journal, it's who do I want to be today? And then I'll look at my schedule and I'll see who's in my schedule and I'll like, who do they need me to be today?
Oh, that's huge. Who do they need me to be today? Wow.
And so that way I'm like, okay, how do I grow into being that person? Or how do I call those skills, those talents, those needs up so that when I arrive there, I arrive as my better full grown self for that moment? And I know I could probably be better at it, but it's better than, and you saw Scott on Friday, it's respond or react.
Yep.
Do I just show up? Or do I show up with the intention of being the person that would serve the situation, the person, the time better? And if I don't know what that is, then that means I need to go back and do some personal growth so that next time I'm put in that situation with those people, places, or things, I can be a better version of me.
Man, truth bombs dropped. So listen, everybody, what you just heard from Eric, you can get this every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I mean, this is a great example of what he's pouring out into the universe. And all you have to do is go to Eric G. Reid's Facebook page and listen in, and you'll get this stuff for free. So check him out. Eric, how can people, other than your Facebook page, how can people get a hold of you and find out what kind of, I know you're running correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're running some coaching packages for 2019, or you had some specials. What's going on?
Well, we were giving away a car with every coaching package yesterday, but that ended. So I'm sorry for your listeners, but maybe we'll revive it and you'll flip for the car. The easiest way to keep up is really just ericgreid.com/subscribe. And that puts you in the newsletter, which has a mini coaching tip, upcoming Facebook Lives with guests and authors, and then also the link to the 90-day Jumpstart. The 90-day Jumpstart is really, it's a boot camp because I was put in a crisis situation, not by my design, that required that I make some personal growth really fast, really hard, get some clarity. And it worked. But I would rather have people make the choice than be pushed into a position that they have to grow. You always get to grow. It's whether you're going to do it or somebody else is going to do it to you. So right. The 90 days is really like, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to get this work done once and for all so I can get started.
Love it. All right. So you guys check him out. Eric, thank you so much for having the dialogue. First of all, you were the first one out of the chute. Law number 1, intentionality.
I'm setting a bar. The law of the list has just been raised.
You set the bar for the 14 other leaders and coaches that follow you. You're just one of many of the esteemed guests I'm going to have. They're all experts in their own right. I specifically actually chose each law for each individual that I'm having on for my own particular personal reasons. Yours intentionality was because of what your intentionality with Success Life Live every day. You have to be intentional to pull that kind of stuff off and the value you bring to other people. And right when I read the word intentionality, I knew I was going to put that right next to your name. So thanks for being such a good sport and taking one for the team and going first.
I loved it. I get to be in Italy this morning, so
you are. You're in Italy this morning when it's 5:30 in the evening here. So listen, everybody, that was the Law of Intentionality, and remember, this is week 1 of 15 weeks of my growth series on the Weekly Roar, or in the Weekly Roar. Just jump into the Lion's Den on the Facebook. It's a Facebook group, and you can catch these free every week. And we're going to continue going through these till we get to the end. So let's see. I think that's it. I think that's all we're going to do. We talked about what you got going on for 2019. So, and how to get a hold of you. Next week. So who's up on, who's coming in from the batter's box? We have our very own John Wayne Mullins. Yes, that name is real. He goes by John Wayne Mullins.
And he gets to do the law of awareness?
He gets to do the law of awareness. Well, you know, he became aware, and what happened? He got hitched.
I know, he was telling me that story. He was like, it wasn't a rapid romance. I just finally woke up. But John is a phenomenal teacher. You guys, that's the law. I mean, I almost want to ask who's getting the different laws, but
actually, I am going to post that because many people are wondering. If you see the post in LinkedIn, you'll see I tagged all the people. However, I'm going to go ahead. Lion Enterprise business page on Facebook is going to have a list of all the upcoming presenters. It's going to include Eric's name, so you know who to look for on Facebook. But yeah, so John Wayne Mullins next Wednesday, same time, same place. So until we meet again, Eric, thank you so much. Everybody, remember, be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. Take care, everybody. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci. Ciao.
Ciao.